Here we go. So, yes, as Louisa said, I'm Kath. I'm also known as the Geordie Witch, and the clue is literally in the title. I am from Newcastle, living in Liverpool these days, and a definite adopted Scouser. I've been a practicing witch for over 25 years because I'm 50 at the end of this month, and I'm more than slightly traumatized by it. So yeah, I've been at this a while, done quite a bit over the years, walked a few paths before kind of settling into kind of my current focus. So I mainly these days focus on kind of folk magic, but particularly how it relates to an urban environment, really, because I'm very much a city witch, and was delighted to talk recently in the Witchology podcast about urban witchery, which I don't think is talked about enough. But I'm also one of those annoying astrology girls. And so particularly love astrology, and tonight really kind of getting into the power of the planets. So we are going to look at why bother working with the planets. What's the point? What we're getting out of it, what we mean by planetary magic. We're going to touch on what the 7 classical planets are and what their attributes are, and then get into a bit of kind of the astrology of spring. And then the most important bit, some simple ways really to infuse your magic with the power of the planets, which is so hopefully that end bit will kind of bring all these kind of different bits together, and you'll get a practical sense of kind of, and so what can I do with it?
Can I just ask, Amanda and Danielle, do you mind muting your videos? That's it. Awesome, thank you. Just helps with the recording, and if you do have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat and I will relay them to Kath as we go through.
Thank you. Sorry, my slides are sticking for some reason. Okay, sorry, slides have been awkward. And so I think one certainly when I start getting into this, when you start thinking about planetary magic, this type of image is certainly kind of what came to mind for me. Lots of ancient grimoires, kind of seals, evocations, like really dusty tomes of books, and it just felt really, really kind of inaccessible and like difficult to kind of get a grip of. And I think that puts a lot of people off, or people who think you need to really deeply understand astrology, which you don't either.
It does definitely seem to have this kind of scholarly vibe to it, doesn't it? Where you think, oh, I have tried to sort of dabble in it a few times, and tried to really. I mean, I know the basics, and I feel okay at a certain level, but I feel like once you get past that, it starts getting really, really technical and hard.
Yeah, it definitely can feel like that, but there's such simple things we can do, which is, and I think spring particularly is a really, because of the energy of spring, and we'll talk a little bit about the energy of the season and how it progresses through the season. I think it's a really good time to start this if it's not something if it's something you don't already do, or to try and deepen your practice. And you can really go very, very, very deep and technical with this stuff, or you can just wear silver on Monday to represent the moon. There is such a wide range of ways we can work with it. But I guess sort of why bother? And I think we're just instinctively drawn to the planets, aren't we? I'm sure we've all literally kind of stood under the stars and looked up at a star-filled sky and just felt a bit of a sense of, connection or awe, and just, I think we're just instinctively drawn to the heavens. And particularly, as witches, most of us, although not all, most of us will have some form of relationship with the sun or the moon. And this is, so we all probably already are doing some of this to a certain degree. This is just about maybe kind of taking it further or deeper, or widening the types of energies you're working with. But one of the reasons I think we should embrace this in our practice is the planets are real. They are physical, they are tangible. We can see them. you know, we've had Jupiter and Venus really, really visible recently. You can look out of your window and see them. And we can't say the same for all systems of magic, can we? You know, magic can feel a bit etheric and a bit ineffable and a bit, you know, abstract sometimes. Whereas I think the planets, in terms of when we're starting to work with different energies and learn about different energies, you know, they are real and tangible, and we can see them and interact with them. And we also get to experience them energetically, kind of through our natal charts. I think anybody who's been through the joy of their Saturn return knows the power of kind of some of those sort of planetary transits. But for me, and I think one of the most important thing is it gives us a bit of an underpinning system, and it really, I think, can help our understanding of things like correspondences. I know when I was a kind of early witch, you know, picking up, you know, Scott Cunningham's, you know, Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs, and you'd go, oh, you know, lavender ruled by Mercury, and you're like, well, why why Mercury? You know what?
Yeah. And also, how did you figure that out?
Exactly. We'll find that out. We will talk about why herbs are so how they are. But once you start kind of getting your head around the planets and their energies and actually how they do sort of play out in plants and other things, it really can give you a bit of really deepened my understanding overall of magical energy and correspondences. And therefore can give us a bit of an underpinning system. I think it's really easy to say things like, oh, just follow your intuition, or, you know, whatever, work with whatever you're drawn to. That's actually really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. Once it's good to sort of follow your intuition when you're starting out or whatever, and you're not really quite sure. It's good to play around with things, but you're absolutely right. Once you actually start to delve into those layers of, okay, so I've created an ally in this herb. What correspondences does it have, like which planet is it ruled by, and then which day is it best to use on, and then all of a sudden you start adding in these layers to your spell work that make it all the more potent and powerful.
Absolutely. So I think it can give us a real kind of structure, and I think if you are an individual who prefers working in a bit of a structured way, I think things like planetary magic can really enhance that way of work. And that's not to say that you can't work with it intuitively, because you absolutely can, and certainly when you get into some of the correspondences, they won't feel right for you, and I've got examples where I'm just like, no, that does not feel like that for me. So it's not about following any of this rigidly, but I think it can give you, you know, a really better understanding. So a little bit of a history, don't worry, I'm not going to like go through loads of like ancient grimoires or anything. But I do think it's important to kind of understand the context of any system we're working with. And we think we get the word planet from the Greek for wanderers. And I just really love the idea of planets being wanderers in the sky.
That's fantastic, isn't it? That imagery is just, yeah, they're just these great big lumbering things roaming around in the sky. Just fantastic.
Exactly. And if you think about kind of, you know, because they're always moving, and they're coming into contact with each other, and we experience those as transits, like all of our communication with people, some of those are really positive and beneficial and feel great and leave us feeling all happy and warm, and some of them are really difficult and challenging and, you know, leave us kind of going, oh, I don't want to go through that again in a hurry. So, but I do think thinking of those planets as kind of moving around and interacting with each other and interacting with us helps really kind of conceptualize some of this. So our ancient societies kind of started observing specific characteristics that they associated with each of the planets. And so we've got a long established history of planetary magic, particularly in Western occultism. I think it goes back to some kind of 11th century grimoires. So it really has influenced magic in all over the world, but kind of particularly in the West. Really based on the principles of Hermeticism and the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, which people will be, you know, we had a whole load of teachings, but particularly the one we're most familiar with is as above, so below, you know, so within, so without, etc. And I think planetary magic and how the planets interact with something like a herb is a really, you know, a really tangible example of that, as above, so below. And particularly kind of texts like Agrippa's three books of occult philosophy and the Picatrix have heavily influenced our current understanding of planetary magic, and still influences the correspondence that modern magical herbalists are using today can be traced right back to there, which I just think is amazing. I think there's real power in thinking that people have used certain things for like hundreds of years. And if you ever fancy some, bedtime reading, you've got 1,000 pages there of dense occult materialism in some of those books.
And it is rather hard going.
Very hard going. Bit of a definition for us. This is the kind of one of my favorite definitions of planetary magic. The art of evoking, intensifying, and experiencing forces which derive from or are associated with one or another of the 7 traditional planets. And that's from Denning and Phillips' Planetary Magic book, which is one of kind of the classic texts. So we're talking about evoking the energies, intensifying the planetary energies in our lives, and experiencing them. And what we're going to kind of look into is how we kind of do that at a bit of a practical level. But first, we'll kind of understand a little bit about what the different planets are. So you'll find a lot of texts talk about the classical planets rather than maybe all of the planets we would associate in modern astrology today. And there's a list there of the 7 classical planets. And that's because if you think about when these texts were written, and those are the only planets we knew of. So the other planet, technology we had not discovered, the likes of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they were just too far out. So if we think about planets kind of orbiting around us and being further out, the planets that were much further out and are much slower moving, just hadn't been discovered when a lot of our understanding of this. I personally think more practically, these are the planets that have the most personal impact on us as well. That's not to say you can absolutely work with those other planets, those more outer planets. However, I think especially if you're beginning in this, their energies can just be a little bit more difficult to experience and to tap into. So if you start, I would personally suggest starting with some of these the planets that have the most impact on us, which are the ones kind of listed there. So I guess how we kind of get from that definition to how we use it. So it's based on the principle that each planet rules or has a domain or a sphere of influence, and that they kind of rule both an aspect of our lives, but also the natural world. So through understanding what each planet represents and what it rules over, we can kind of meaningfully bring that energy into our lives. And into our magic specifically. And it's also based on the principle that each planet has a corresponding, I mean, if you look at that planetary magic book, the list of things that can be associated with the planets is, pages long. Well, the most common ones we would probably use as witches would be herbs, colours, days of the week, metals, tarot cards, etc., and even musical notes for those who are musically inclined. And I would, as I said, the looking these up, if you look these up online, you will see different lists. On this presentation, I've used the more traditional ones, but you will find conflicting information out there. Don't worry too much about that. There is an element of working through some of this and seeing how you feel. So something like lemon is associated, ruled by the moon. And I personally, because it's really high in water content, I personally find that like jarring. I just don't get that, because I think lemon, citrus fruit, it's the sun, surely. So lemon doesn't work for me in that way. So there will be things that don't work and fit for you, and that's absolutely fine. Don't let it inform you, kind of not restrict you. I mean, I can't lunar lemon. I'm just not having it.
That's not, that doesn't work for me either. I can't. No. See that.
So we're just going to kind of run through the planets, just so we're kind of all on the same page, give some brief examples of their correspondences, and therefore when we get into kind of how you can work with them, it'll make a little bit more sense. So we start off with the moon, rules Cancer, so we do magic around the emotions, the mother archetype, dreams, intuition, etc. Rules Monday, colours are pale blue and silver, herbs, jasmine, almond, white roses, and mugwort. Corresponds to the number 9, and unsurprisingly, things like moonstone, pearls, and silver. So I guess when we're thinking about things that are ruled by the moon, we are thinking about things, say, like we've just mentioned, lemon or melon that has a high water content, or also plants that kind of grow near water. Plants that have a bit of a sedative effect, such as mugwort, tend to be ruled by the moon. Or plants that have like white or silvery sort of leaves or flowers, or are particularly kind of strong smelling at night, like jasmine, they will tend to be lunar. So you can start experimenting with some of this yourself, can't you? You can start maybe choosing a plant if you don't know what it's ruled by, and think, well, what type of properties do I think this plant has, and how do I think that could correspond to a planet? I think is a really good exercise to start working with some of this energy. And then we have Venus, which rules Taurus and Libra. That oversees love, marriage, fertility, beauty, aesthetics, pleasure, harmony, but also money and resources. And people don't often associate Venus with money, but Venus likes her nice things. So you need a few bob for Venus. So and if you think about kind of the two signs of Taurus and Libra, for me, I think you get kind of the two signs of Venus's energy. So colours of the day, colours pink and green, days of the week, Friday, herbs, unsurprisingly, rose, hibiscus, apple, figs. Number 7, rose quartz, emerald, malachite, and things like copper or bronze would also be Venus metals. So we know Venus loves all things beautiful, all things harmonious. So I tend to associate Venus ruled plants and herbs as anything that is kind of a bit showy, a bit OTT. Plants that attract wildlife and bees really tend to be Venus, because it's an attractor, it's attracting something to us. So that's another way to think about kind of Venus herbs, and also kind of things like red fruits, like strawberries or cherries, also tend to be ruled by Venus.
I was talking to somebody about Venus the other day, and they were talking about how Venus has got like a dark side as well, and there's a bit of a like subversive element to Venus and the things that you can do with that. So it can also be used as like a baneful planet.
Yes, absolutely. And you see that in the mythology, don't you, with some of the love goddesses? I mean, it's amazing in mythology how many of the love goddesses are goddesses of love and war.
Yes, yeah.
Aphrodite.
It seems like such a weird juxtaposition, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you can definitely see that play out in them, and all the planets' energy. I think they can all be used in different ways. And then we have Mercury. So we've got rules Gemini and Virgo. So here, we're moving away from the heart center very much to the mental realm of the mind, communication, ideas. Rules Wednesday, colours are grey, blue and yellow, herbs juniper, fennel, lemongrass and lavender. The number 8 and gemstones aquamarine, diamond and tourmaline. I mean, Mercury is a really, really quick moving planet, isn't it? And so it is, and hence we have the term mercurial, meaning kind of changeable and adaptable. So we tend to associate, tend to have plants that are very, very quick growing for Mercury, ruled by Mercury, and also planets that impact the nervous system or the mind would also be ruled by Mercury, such as lavender. And I tend to think of, like, if you think of fennel, I tend to think of like airy sort of plants that are a bit sort of wavy and can be really affected by the element of air also. Next up, we have I'm an Aries, so this is my ruler, Mars. So this is kind of the warrior energy. So, very physical energy, passion, energy, strength, but also anger, war, ambition, drive, conflict. We're talking red and fiery colours. Tuesday days of the week. As unsurprisingly, we're talking kind of spicy, strong tasting herbs such as ginger and chili, the number 5, and if anybody's into tarot, you'll know all the 5, the core cards, the minor arcana 5s all tend to be kind of cards of conflict, and I think that's a really easy way to remember Mars's energy. And then we've got the gemstones there as well. So we think of martial qualities as kind of being really kind of strong and spicy. They also tend to have kind of thorns and prickles as plants. Also plants that kind of support the blood or are very high in iron tend to be ruled by Mars. And I think Mars is really, really good spring energy. It rules Aries, and that is the start of kind of spring season, but it is really good kick-starting, get off your arse and get on with it energy for Mars. And I think it's a really, really good planet to work with in spring energy. Next up we have our sun. So very much whilst I guess the moon is the internal unconscious world, the sun is very much kind of the external world. It wants to help us achieve things. So it's all about happiness and joy and upliftment, all kind of positive attributes. You could still work with the banefully to burn somebody out if you wish, though. Days of the week, Sunday, unsurprisingly, yellow gold, saffron. I think the solar rule herbs are really quite obvious. I think most of us could look at, if you think about kind of yellow uplifting plants that you look at and make you kind of just feel happy and uplifted, things that just evoke positivity tend to be ruled by the sun. So it's kind of a warming feeling. It's not the fiery energy of Mars. It's that kind of like, that warmth you get when you're sort of sunbathing. I always think of that kind of those type of qualities within the plants. Next we have one of my faves, Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius, but also was the ancient ruler of Pisces for Neptune got in on the act. Jupiter expands everything it touches. It's a very, very expansive energy, whether that is expanding in the physical world around abundance and growth and luck, or whether that is expanding the mind and kind of the pursuit of wisdom. I think of Mercury as kind of technical knowledge, like ideas, knowledge, things we physically learn, and Jupiter very much about kind of wisdom and knowledge through either spiritual development or through experience. Got Thursday's day of the week. We're looking at kind of deep blue, rich colours, and borage, peppermint, sage, and yarrow are some of its herbs. The number 4, because it's a very stable energy. It's quite a slow-moving planet, so it is. If you think about kind of the the structure of a 4, it is stable. And gemstones such as kind of lapis lazuli. So plants that grow, quite steadily tend to be ruled by Jupiter. So it's really good for kind of long-term work. So if you wanted to work with Mars to kick something off, thinking about spring, work with Mars to get something new going, and then work with Jupiter on a more longer-term basis to really, start embedding that long-term energy in.
I love Jupiter. But I'm Virgo, and also when we were looking for a new logo for the magazine, Mercury just seemed to work really well with the whole idea of communication and knowledge and everything. But there's something really cool about Jupiter energy. I'm a big fan. Yeah,
absolutely. I think dandelion is like the perfect Jupiter plant, because plants that are ruled by Jupiter tend to be really quite good for you. They tend to be like good tonics and very fortifying for the system, and dandelion is like great for the just a general really good bodily tonic, isn't it? But it just expands everywhere, doesn't it? If you've got dandelions in your garden, they're just everywhere. So I think it's a really good and then finally Big Daddy Saturn. He gets a hard time, doesn't he, Saturn? But he's we need him whether we like it or not.
He's a taskmaster.
He is. So, Capricorn. So we're talking kind of top-down government, top-down authority, limitation. And I think Saturn, it does kind of get a bad reputation, and it is serious energy, but we do need that, don't we? And we need it in our lives, and we need it in our magic sometimes. Sometimes
Absolutely.
We need to.
Yeah, there's no results without discipline and effort and hard graft, and that's what Saturn is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And You know, sometimes we need to work with Saturn to get rid of somebody, to bind somebody, or to do baneful work if that's part of your practice. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for Saturn, I have to say. And many of our kind of baneful plants are ruled by Saturn, unsurprisingly. Any questions so far?
I don't think we've got any in the chat box.
Okay. So I guess getting on to specifically more about kind of the astrology of spring. I think to understand the astrology of kind of any of the seasons, it's helpful to kind of look at the modality of the signs. I'll just go over this just in case people aren't familiar with it. So we've got each of the signs, the 12 zodiac signs fits into 3 modalities, and they're also known as quadruplicities because there's like 4 of them in each group, and we know them as cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And they do in turn kind of take or guide us, the energy guides us through each season, and we'll look at kind of how it specifically guides us through spring. And they kind of represent the unique ways that each sign expresses or navigates through its life. So even though cardinal fire is very, very different from cardinal earth with Capricorn, the same basic instinct to start and initiate things and to respond dynamically and proactively to something will be present in those signs. So what we have is we have cardinal signs basically start every season, followed by the fixed signs, and then the mutable signs end each season. So in the Northern Hemisphere, Aries starts the beginning of spring. So in terms of the astrology of spring, we start with, I've listed all the cardinal signs there just so people can see it. But we're really talking about kind of Aries energy, which comes into space in the vernal equinox when the sun moves into Aries. It's generally around kind of the 19th, 21st, varies a bit each year. But this year, I think it's the 20th of March. And this is kind of really visionary, push for change, new beginnings, active, assertive, get up, get stuff done energy. Can struggle with finishing things though, but it is the energy you want to work with in your goals for spring to get things done. So working with the astrology of spring, it is the perfect time to do anything to do with new beginnings, ambition, leadership, going after what you want, starting a plan, you know, especially anything to do with your physical health. It's ruled by Mars, Aries. So again, we've kind of got that very kind of physical energy. And then we move on to the fixed sign of Scorpio. And Scorpios are kind of the doers, the fixed sign of Taurus, it's the doer of the zodiac. So we've got Aries, or the cardinal signs that kind of start everything, and then it's kind of the fixed sign that picks up the mantle and goes, right, I'm going to do the real hard work now. For Taurus, you know, Taurus's archetype is the farmer, and I think that's a really good way to kind of think of Taurus energy. You know, it's really about being hardworking and patient, stable, doing the hard work, getting the job done. So any goals that we've kind of started during Aries season, we really get to embed during Taurus season. And it's therefore, though, particularly good to work on anything to do with abundance, success, physical pleasure, love, and self-love. And then we close out the energy of spring with mutable signs, in this case, the sign of Gemini. So the mutable signs are, you know, really adaptable, they're flexible, really good with change. So they also have the urge to improve things. So anything that we have kind of started in Aries, solidified during Taurus, we really kind of get to perfect during Gemini season. They are also kind of known as kind of the old souls of the zodiac a little bit, because they know inherently, because of where they are in a season, that everything comes to an end, and their job is to kind of prepare us for the changing of the season. Because at the end of Gemini season, obviously we start with Cancer, the cardinal sign, and we've got the summer solstice, and we're into kind of the cycle again. So it is that kind of rolling energy throughout the season. But you may want to kind of, as we kind of coming into kind of spring and very, very early summer with Gemini season, it is, you know, we're starting to be out and about more, aren't we? You know, the weather's warmer, we might be feeling a bit more sociable. So we're out and about, we're making new connections. We might be making new connections that really help further our goals, as well as kind of learning new skills. It's a really good time for any kind of business and improvements. Anything particularly to do with kind of communication, but really reviewing what you've done so far, and, you know, making those final tweaks before starting the cycle again. I just want to particularly kind of touch on the specific energy of the equinox, of the vernal equinox, because that is, for it's a moment in time, kind of brings its own sort of specific energy. So we get the vernal equinox from vernal, meaning new or fresh, and equinox from the Latin, meaning equal night. So we know the sun has been kind of growing in strength since the winter solstice. We've got the rays of the sun shining down on the equator. So we've got this point of kind of perfect balance. So it is, if any part of your life is feeling kind of out of balance, the time, that very, very specific period, is a really good time to do any magic to bring more balance and harmony in your life. So it's a good time just to do some journaling about where do you feel you are out of balance in your life. And just to shout out before we get into kind of planetary magic, if you don't do anything else from this, please set some intentions on the Aries new moon, because we have the new moon literally hours after the vernal equinox on the 21st of March. So this is the start of the astrological new year. It is the start of all of the new beginnings. It is the best energy you are going to get to start something new. So if you don't do anything else, I just ask you, we've got no planets in retrograde. So this really is the perfect time to set some intentions for whatever you want to draw into your life in the Aries new moon. And just a little word on intention, because I think this is a word that gets bandied about a lot and people don't actually stop to think what it means. So a little definition there from one of my favorite witchy authors, Deborah Lipp. To intend is to focus fixedly and consciously on a firm desire with determination and with absolute confidence. So I think about kind of like, it's like setting your sat-nav destination, isn't it? It's where you're going, what you're aiming to. But I just think really practically, just ensure they're written in the present tense. Spend some time thinking about how you feel, what is your emotion attached to this? Because if it's something isn't generating emotion in you, it's probably not the right thing. So if you have got intentions that are vague or uninspiring, they're probably not the right intentions. And it is about getting, it is much easier said than done to write really good intentions, I think. I think it's a skill, because
absolutely.
Really is.
Yeah, it's definitely something. It's like a muscle that needs to be exercised, and it does take time to actually like nail down that it's a lot of people start out in witchcraft like making wishes almost. It's like witchcraft, isn't it? And that's not what intention is. You have to be incredibly specific with it.
Yeah.
But then you also have to consider all the potential things that could come about as a result of that intention, and just try and limit any kind of damage that can be done as a result of those things happening.
I think it's Keldon who describes them as a fishing net, that if you throw it out too wide, you're going to catch everything, you know, the fish you want, but all the crap in the sea as well. Yeah. But if you don't throw it out far enough, you're not going to get anything you want. So it is about getting that balance, isn't it? It is about making them detailed enough, but not so specific that you are limiting yourself. And I always add in, you know, this or something better, because I think we should give the universe permission to like level it. If you might be paying, as far as your guides or your universe or whoever, whatever you believe in, they might be like, she's playing small, you know, level up. So, you know, this or something better. and affirm how you want it to come to you, I think is really important. Even positive intentions, if they come into your life in a really jarring way, can be really, really disruptive. So I always add that, and it comes, easily and effortlessly, and, it comes in a positive way. So just a little plea for practicing your intentions. Right, getting into the actual how we bring all of these things together. So we've talked about the planets, what they mean. We've talked about the energy of spring and what that means astrologically. Now we're just going to kind of finish up by bringing this together and thinking about what we can practically do in our spell work, in our life, to kind of supercharge our goals for spring with it. So really, really easy things to start with, to just get, if you haven't done anything to do with the planets before and you're starting from zero, the easiest thing to do is to just do a bit more research. I've given you some examples about what the planets mean. There's loads of different work out there. Just understand them a little bit more. Try and get outside and observe how the energy is changing in the natural world. Can you spot how the astrological and planetary energies are coming about in the natural world? So look at that bulb pushing through in your garden and think about, that is really Mars energy there. It is, really kind of using all that energy to get out of the ground. I think sometimes you've just got to start thinking conceptually, isn't it? And just kind of spotting these little things, observe how the sun's getting warmer and stronger, can go a long way. Just pick up a small number of planetary correspondences and start journaling about why you think they're linked to that planet. So, just pick Mint and think, well, why is Mint, ruled by Mercury, and start ruled by Jupiter, and start journeying about that. Go stargazing. As I said, we were saying right at the beginning, these are real, physical, tangible, getting used to the skies and where Venus rises, where you live, just kind of, and then you can start, then one night, have a conversation. I'm sure most of us go and have chats with the moon, and, it's the same principle, just a different type of planet, maybe just a different type of conversation.
It's so true, actually, isn't it? Because it's so easy to see the moon, and it's obviously very easy to connect with something that you can obviously see. But once you actually start to learn how to pick out the different planets in the sky, then you can really start focusing in on the energy of that planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, there's loads of maps online about, what they'll look like in your area, or there's loads of apps. So, start trying to get familiar with your own night skies. I think can make a real difference. And then get familiar with your natal chart, and your own kind of how your astrology, only if that interests you, though. Don't feel you have to be into astrology to work with the planets, because you absolutely don't. Or if it is something you're interested in, I think it is a really good way to kind of start understanding their energy. Okay, some kind of practical things you can do. Create a planetary altar. So you can either create a planetary altar dedicated to a specific planet. So you might want to work on your health. So you might want to work with the sun and have a solar kind of planetary altar. Or you can, a good experiment, a good discipline, you can pick a planet for each period of time and work through the classical planets in order and really do a bit of a deep dive into each of those planets. And then it's a lovely act of creativity. If you're somebody who has the space and likes creating altars, it can be a really lovely act of creativity. It really helps you understand the planet's energy, I think, to start putting it all together with, look at colours of cloths and herbs and incense and representations of animals. I haven't touched on that today, but there's really interesting stuff about why certain animals are associated with each planet. So give an example there. Imagine if you want, you want a new relationship for spring, that is one of your goals. A Venus altar, you can make a really, really beautiful Venus altar. Nice pink green altar cloth, some roses, maybe the Ace of Cups tarot card, anything that feels really kind of beautiful or sensuous could go on an altar for Venus. I think planetary altars are one of the best ways to get started, personally. Also, you can work with kind of the deities. If you're somebody who works with deities, or you like working with archetypes, you can start getting into deity and archetype work. I think, again, sometimes, even though I think planetary energy is a bit more is easier to get into than some of the other kind of more intangible systems. I think it can be difficult to feel like a personal connection. You know, we see the moon, it's really there and close. Saturn can feel a bit, you know, and what, but if you you could start working with the god Saturn, and put a picture of him on your altar, or start saying his prayers. So imagine if one of your goals is to bring that structure and discipline in, then working with that Roman god of time who oversees these areas and doing maybe rituals or dedications to him could be a way of really, really practically bringing that energy in. But again, you don't need to practice deity work. I'm not a theistic witch. You might want to think about them as archetypes or archetypal energies that are in, you know, what does your inner Saturn look like? Who's your inner taskmaster? One of the easiest way, and I think we inherently do this anyway, is the kind of to think about magical timing. So take account of how the timing of the planets in your spell work. So most of us may do something with the days of the week. You can take that to another level and also work with planetary hours. So each hour, I say hour because it isn't an actual hour, is ruled by the 7 classical planets. They're calculated in a really complicated way. So I would, unless somebody really like maths and working out sun rising and setting times, I recommend just getting an online calculator or app, and looking up the planetary hours. So if you wanted to do I don't know, a spell to enhance your intuition, you could do it on a Monday under the planetary hour ruled by the moon to really kind of call that energy in. And you can also, if you're into astrology, work with your own kind of planetary transits, including those that are kind of impacting your own natal chart. So if you've got a really good transit going on, say between something like Mars and Jupiter, that would be a really good time to kind of, you know, set an intention or do spell work for a new goal around kind of abundance, getting that money magic going. Symbols, glyphs and squares for kind of our visual witches, again, can be, and the thing I should say is these things aren't standalone. You can absolutely, you know, layer these together, include your symbols on your planetary altar. You know, it really is a bit of a mix and match. They aren't kind of standalone, but each planet, you'll be familiar with kind of those astrological, they're called glyphs, but they're just planetary symbols really. But it's thought that the ancients thought they instilled the pure energy of the planet. So actually carving a planetary glyph onto a candle, or drawing it onto your body in oil, is a really, really powerful way to pull the energy of the planet in. You can meditate on them. I use them a lot in candles and sigils, build them into my sigils. I think working with the glyphs is really, really powerful. You can also work with planetary squares, which are kind of like magical Sudoku. And that's kind of based on that each planet. We were talking about the numbers before, weren't we? When we were looking through the each planet has a mathematical square associated with it. So something like Jupiter would have a row of 4 and a row of 4, and all of those add up to, I think it's 36 for Jupiter. So yeah, very, very Sudoku like. I don't think you need to understand them, because I think again there is so much energy over the years programmed into them that you could just kind of work with them. So just print it out and write your petition over it would be just a really simple, or put it in your charm bag. So, you know, could use the Kamea for the moon if your spring goals are about working with enhancing your intuition or doing more dream work. So kind of, you know, as we've gone through, all of those planets have a lot of correspondences, and we can make those correspondences, as Lou was saying about layering things, we can make them as simple or as complex as we like. So you could do this really, really simply through color magic. So if you wanted to evoke Mercury, and I don't know, maybe you've got a meeting at work and you've got to be on your game, and there's got to be, you know, you need to be really mentally switched on, you could, you know, maybe draw the sigil, the glyph for Mercury on you with a little bit of body oil, and then wear, you know, yellow or grey, which are Mercury's colours, and that would be a really simple way of pulling that energy. or you can do activities that are inspired by the planets. So art is a very Venusian activity, or you can really consciously use them much more directly in your spell work. So if coming into Aries season, you've decided you really want to work with Mars and you're really going to up your protection, it would be the perfect time to do a new witch's bottle and put loads of Mars correspondences in it, really get that assertive warrior energy as a way of kind of really proactively working with the planet. And I just simply call it in. I would, work with all, layer as much of the correspondences as I can, and then I do just kind of chance and ask, call the Mars energy in like we would do maybe for the elements or our deities. It's the same process. There's also loads of chants and prayers online, which are dedicated to the planets and that form part of their correspondences. So go and look those up, experiment those. I think chanting is a really good way of raising energy for spell work, or just create your own if you're kind of so inspired. You can, I've never worked with the Orphic hymns, but these are poems that are kind of, I think there's something like 86 of them or something for a whole range of deities and forces from the ancient poet Orpheus. But it includes the planets. And I know somebody who swears she kept her car from breaking down on a long car journey by repeating the Mercury Orphic hymn.
Wow. Literally going to go and look this up right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there is people who really believe they are very, very powerful. So again, they're all online. You can go and look them up. And one really simple thing I like to do is planetary knot magic. Which isn't talked about a lot, but I think it's a really simple thing of doing it. So as we said, we've got each of the numbers, each of the planets have a number. So if you're somebody who likes knot magic, get a piece of yarn or cotton that correspond to that planet. And while it's chanting, I do a series of the numbers and knots associated with that planet. You could burn a planetary incense while you're doing it. You could do it on the right planetary hour. You could anoint it with a planetary oil. So, there's loads of different ways you can build more intention in that. And I use that to store the energy of that planet. And then when I particularly need it again, then I undo the knots to release the energy and fuel my spell work.
I love that. That's a great idea. And quite a simple one as well.
It is, absolutely. And then finally, one kind of final thing you can do, which I think is a really tangible way of working with the planets and something you can keep with you, so it helps keep your mindset as well, is to make planetary charm bags. So choose something of the appropriate kind of color material and just simply fill it with herbs, crystals. You could put the glyph, again, print out the square or the glyph and write your petition over that and put it in there. So if you have a goal around kind of success or health for spring, then you could create a solar charm bag full of solar correspondences, such as sunflower, chamomile, basil, etc. Well, I hope that has been helpful to you. What I would say, I really like this quote, actually: the universe is full of magical things, patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. So I would just encourage people to kind of experiment if you don't already work with this. The planets, like all of these magical energies, are here, waiting for us. They want to co-create with us. So I really just encourage people to, experiment and feel into it and see what works for you.
I love that so much. And I think it's a really, really important time to get on board with that planetary energy, because I always say at the start of January, when everybody's making these New Year's Eve resolutions that they're just not going to keep because they're still in hibernation mode. Yeah. You are not going to keep those resolutions. You are not in a position to be making them. Just don't. Wait until the spring equinox and use that energy of the ending of the astrological year the Mars energy, the Aries energy. Use that to just like catapult yourself forward into what it is that you actually want to achieve. And this session has given us so much like that we can work with, like building altars and petitioning deities and all sorts. So this has been super helpful. I hope everybody else has got as much out of it as I have, because I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Oh,
thank you very much, Kath. Has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask Kath?
Oh,
Loved it. Thank you so much. It was lovely. Yeah, it was really, really like really comprehensive, incredibly useful, full of very, very practical and awesome information that we can all use in our practices. And it's actually got me really fired up, and I cannot wait to like get my witch on this Ostara. I just can't wait. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the energy this year. So I do think it's thank you for your comments, everybody. Was lovely, because I was so nervous.
Can you believe that Kath gets nervous? Like she's so knowledgeable and wise, and before these things she's always a bag of nerves, but she's actually just so amazing that it's just it's wonderful to be able to have you. And before you go, I just want you to go and follow Kath on social media. She's got the Geordie Witch. She's the Geordie Witch on Instagram, but she's also co-founder of Secrets of the Cauldron, which is an amazing business. They've got witchy planners that they do for 6 months of every year, and then they do like printables as well, and they also have this app where they do all their workshops. Do you want to tell us a bit more about Secrets of the Cauldron, Kath?
Yeah, Secrets of the Cauldron is very much I would say Geordie Witch is kind of my snark, whereas Secrets of the Cauldron is kind of my nice, more responsible side. Yeah, we it's really resources sort of aimed at new witches. So it is again what I've tried to do here. We try and bring practical, down to earth. Actually, this is how physically what you can do, as opposed to maybe some of the more abstract things that are out there, which can be really interesting but not terribly helpful.
Yes, and like Cheryl, who is Kath's business partner and friend, is also incredibly amazing, and I've got nothing but really good things to say about these people, so please go and follow them on social media. And we're really hoping that Kath might come back again at some point and do another session if she's up for it.
Yes, now I've got over my throat. Now that wasn't so bad, because actually really
we're not scary. We're not scary.
No.